If a company is to expand into foreign markets, then anyone worth its salt looks to China with a huge market size and vast natural resources. If China continues to grow at the rate it's growing at now, it'll outstrip the US as having the world's largest GNP. China, of course, is Ireland's biggest trading partner in Asia, and as a result, many Irish people have moved there. But culturally, China is still a world away from the West. With me now, two people who are familiar with that vast country. Rob Kiely, Operations Director for PCH International, based in China. He's based in China, and we'll also be talking, and I'm joined in studio, I'm happy to say, by Des Bishop, who spent much of the past year or thereabouts living in China, learning the language and checking out their sense of humour. First of all, Rob, tell me about PCH and how you ended up, I think you moved your family to China in fairly recent times as well.
That's right, Sean. Yeah, my family are over there since, over about a year and a half now, since about March 2013. I finished up with Pfizer there in Grange Castle there in Clondalkin, and needs must, I guess. There was an opportunity came along and just took it, and delighted I took it and never looked back. Best company I've ever worked with, bar none.
You're talking about Pfizer or PCH?
PCH.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Case.
It's always the one. It's always the one you're working for is the best ever, or so it should be. So what does PCH do, and how is it managing to gain a foothold in China? Is it kind of a broker for other people who want things done and provided from and by China?
Correct. I mean, PCH provides an awful lot of services for entrepreneurs from end to end. It's a full range of platform from any entry level entrepreneur right the way through to e-commerce, sourcing of materials, inventory management. All of that is on service available to them. I think it's the only company right now that has the end-to-end platform for hardware startups.
Is that another way of using another piece of jargon, maybe a one-stop shop?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, for any hardware startups, any entrepreneur hardware startup now, the Highway 1 program with PCH takes care of
Give us an example of one or two of the things that you've done then, getting from the idea to the product.
So the company has an amazing program called Highway 1, which will take, I think there's an Irish company now called Drop, which I think are becoming really, really popular. They have a weighing scale which links to your iPhone application, which can determine weights of ingredients and that for your baking and stuff like that. And that's really taken off. So
why would you want that?
I know when you're practicing your baking there, Sean, on Sunday, every Sunday morning.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering why you want to connect it to an iPhone or an iPad, it's sort of an app,
So it will adjust if you over put ingredients in, it'll adjust your numbers, your calculations very automatically. I mean, that's just the start. These guys are incredible. They have a huge...
Yeah, we'll talk about the scale of things as well, and we'll talk about Shenzhen in a few minutes. But Des Bishop, good morning to you. I mean, did you not have enough with language learning with the fathers?
Yeah. Well, I mean... It was partly because of the Irish language thing. I mean, on a real level, you connect with people differently when you can speak with them in another language. So despite the fact that I was very familiar with Irish society, I felt I connected in a deeper way, and I certainly learned about Gaeltacht culture, right? So because I had a previous interest in China, I thought this journey could be magnified by 1,000 if you could learn the Chinese language and connect with China. Because I just found that there would be so much to show the world, like so much interesting stuff. And part of it was purely down to the fact that I thought it would be good television, which I think I was right about. I mean, I think it's a really interesting place, but it's very hot. You find a lot of people just go there, they dip their toes in, they find the stuff that we immediately find funny, fish out of water stuff, and then they're gone. And that's fine, that's funny, that's entertaining, but I thought there would be a lot more to show if you spent some time to make some relationships. So thank God it worked out, but you do have to learn. The point is, I say in my show, the world is shrinking, it's time to meet the new neighbours, but you need to be able to talk to them. So, you got to put the effort in.
I mean, that must have taken a huge amount of effort on your part. How good did you become at speaking Chinese or Mandarin?
I mean, my Chinese is okay. I mean, I do stand-up comedy now on a regular basis in Chinese. I haven't left completely. I come back, I do some shows, and then I go back there because I don't make any money in China, so I have to come back and do a bit of work and then go back there. But, I mean, my Chinese is okay. I mean, to a Westerner, when I do a show, like I was in Edinburgh, I was doing a show. If there's Chinese in the audience, I talk to them in Chinese. The Westerners are blown away. But Chinese people just think my Chinese is pretty good, particularly for the amount of time I've been learning it. But
Which is how long?
It's still broken Chinese,
From a standing start when?
Oh, from February 2013, yeah. And then till now. But I mean, I'm studying all the time. And like I listen to, I go to bed at night, I still listen to the radio, like I still listen to Chinese radio, message all my friends on WeChat. The 5th most used app on the planet. Nobody in Ireland has heard of it. But, I'm constantly trying to keep myself engaged with the Chinese
One
language.
thing I want to hear from both of you about is just developing relationships with people in China, because that's obviously key and things are done differently there and you've got to ease yourself into it. Rob, what's your experience been?
Yeah, and your language, like Des said, is key. You do have to have a little bit of it. You're absolutely lost if you don't have that. But you reach a kind of a plateau where you get enough just to get around. And you kind of, the Irish, particularly myself, I'm happy with that, that I have enough to get around and to have a good quality of life. But yeah, it is difficult, to interact. But the English is becoming more and more popular over there now, definitely. You see an awful lot of English colleges opening up for that.
Right. Describe your family, though, Rob, and what kind of challenges. I mean, have you got young kids who've got to go, presumably you've got them in an international school or something like that?
Yeah, my wife is over there. She's originally from Azerbaijan, so she has Russian already in English, and now she's learning Chinese as well. So my son is the same.
Aged?
Age 7. So he's going to school now, bilingual school over there. So he has the same Russian, English and Chinese.
And what about just the ordinary day-to-day business of living? What's been the biggest challenges there?
I think, to be honest, for me personally, I like my food, right? So that was a bit of a challenge, all right.
Oh, you don't like the Chinese food?
It's okay.
You want the full Irish on a Saturday morning, do you?
I do, yeah. But unfortunately, I'm struggling getting that. So there's an opportunity there for somebody if they want to get sausages over there somehow.
But what about, say, decorum and speaking your mind and respecting the other people? I mean, what are the things you've had to adjust to there and adapt to?
Well, there's a huge culture of saving face, and there's a very culture of, from a leadership point of view, that the leader says and the worker does, and it's not challenged. So if you're trying to tap into creativity in people, it can be a challenge, because their automatic is that you don't challenge the leader. What the leader says goes, and that can be difficult if you're trying to get them to be more creative and to open up a little bit more. But it takes a bit of work. But it can
I've
be
directly encountered that problem because the stand-up comedies just started there. And they embraced me and they wanted me to sort of teach them everything I knew from the West. But actually their leader did not like the fact that everybody started to look to me. And I immediately had a series of confrontations with him, which eventually led to the fact that I can no longer work with those guys. And I started my own gig, not in competition with them. I just wanted to run a gig the way that we would run a gig in the West. And they started writing all these messages about some people have risen up against us and we will destroy all invaders and all these things. They started writing public posts because he really considered it to be a massive slight that I never sort of respected his authority.
And who is this leader? Who are we talking about here?
He's just a guy who started this stand-up comedy team. He considers it a team, and then people join his team, and he's the leader of the team. And he just, despite the fact that so many of the comedians' abilities have surpassed him, and he's not a bad guy really, it's just a cultural thing, but so many of their abilities have surpassed him. He's not the funniest. He always puts himself on last. He's always on. And it's just a cultural thing, and nobody questions it. I'm the only one that questions it. And then two guys that are really influenced by Western culture sort of came with me. But all of a sudden, we're in a cultural revolution situation. We're just trying to make a few people laugh.
And Rob, when you're trying to do a deal with people, how do you tell them you're not happy with maybe the quality of service or that you want something changed? Would you do it the same way as you would here? I'm not happy and that has to change.
No, it's never direct. It always has to be, maybe this could be better if you tried it this way, or, perhaps if you looked at it from this angle, or it has to be very much diverted left or right. You can't go head on.
But no direct criticism.
No,
doesn't work that way.
Absolutely not. No.
But the one thing that strikes anybody, I suppose, who's ever visited China, as I did myself nearly a dozen years ago now, covering an official visit with President Macaulay at the time, going to Shenzhen, and is just things they can be made to happen very, very fast. I remember Sean O'Driscoll, for instance, of Glendimplex, saying you get a new ring road around Beijing every 6 months if you want it, and that's the kind of thing they do.
Yeah, the speed is incredible. There's a new building going up there now. I think it's going to be the second tallest building in the world, 660 metres or something like that. And they've just put that up maybe over 2-3 years. 8 new metro lines going in 2 years. It's just the infrastructure.
You'd be amazed how efficient corruption can be. I mean, it can get things done incredibly fast sometimes.
Have you been able to try something like that in your audience nowadays, or would you have to maybe run that joke past?
Yeah, well, you can't. At an official gig, at a gig where you've applied to the censor, which means a legal gig, you could never say that. But we do a lot of small small gigs that are like under the radar, and like a sort of a slightly sort of, sarcastic joke about corruption maybe would fly, but you have to be careful. Like I have a routine about the Chinese news. It's pretty critical. It doesn't directly say that the Chinese news is a propaganda tool for the government, but I mean, clearly that's the joke. And that goes down great. Like the audiences love it, but you can never do it when like anyone important, there's times where you can't do it. So you just have to you have to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. But you also have to be careful because you can think that you're safe and then you're not.
What kind of numbers, Des, have you been getting at the gigs, say the official ones that you have to run the script past the censor for?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done a huge amount of them, but those would run from anything from 200 to 800. The biggest one I did was an 800-seater. When I was that was in the series, I was opening up for quite a famous guy in China. That was really serious. There was leaders there and everything, so I couldn't say anything out. But that gig was really good fun, actually. The audience were good. But then there's a lot of other gigs which we have applied officially, quote unquote. But then, we just say whatever we want. But we don't say anything dangerous, but we don't exactly follow the stuff that we submitted.
And what about the sense of humour? Will you get a laugh for the same kind of things that you'll get in Vicar Street or wherever your next show is going to be here?
Well, I mean, they don't have the immersion there, but, to be honest, their sense of humour is pretty open. Like, they're pretty willing to laugh. They're not a very serious... I think people think Chinese are very dour, but actually they're really up for a laugh. And despite the fact that they haven't been that exposed to Western stand-up comedy, they do like the sort of freewheeling, sort of personal storytelling style that certainly I bring and a few other guys have brought to the table. Like, they do go for it. It's not a huge culture. It's not a huge jump for them to be into it, despite the fact that they haven't been exposed to it.
Rob, we were talking earlier in the intro about the growth in China and how they're set now to surpass the United States in GNP terms. How sustainable is this boom?
I think they're poised right now. There's an energy over there. You feel it when you're actually amongst them. There's an entrepreneurial energy there. I think it's very sustainable. I think that the only thing that's holding them back right now is their access to the larger markets. Once that's cracked, and they'll find ways. Then we have to.
No,
watch.
I understand. You've just started yourself. You're a launcher. You have launched would it be a 10,000 person employment drive?
Yes, that would be pretty normal. So we probably do accomplish that over a period of maybe 6 to 8 weeks.
Employed at what?
Be manufacturing or machining or working. That would be fairly normal.
You're recruiting that number of people?
Yeah, in that period of time, yeah.
It seems like a vast number. I mean, like if ID Ireland brought in that many jobs in an average year, you'd be saying, well done, guys,
Yeah, Fine Gael would definitely get elected again.
Well, I think their target is slightly ahead of that. But in any event, I mean, maybe up around the 12 or 13,000 in net terms. But to do what? Just explain a little bit more.
Yeah, so I mean, you'd have, products would be launching. There's a design phase, and then you have the manufacturing phase. When you get to the manufacturing phase, you have a launch capability time, which would be a couple of months. These products get launched. They have a short shelf life, so you have a really, really condensed period of time that you have to manufacture. So you have a lot of equipment and you need a lot of people. We would have that kind of recruitment drive annually.
And do you do some work as well for Apple with the manufacturer of iPad?
Yes, for accessories and stuff. PCH do a lot of accessories for a lot of Fortune 500 companies. Apple would be one of them. Yeah. So we do quite a lot of cases, accessories, stuff like that for them.
You're talking about, say, those lovely leather cases that are
exactly,
it would be, I suppose, well, depending on the quality and of the raw materials, you pay a lot or maybe slightly less for them. I mean, is that the kind of thing that has to be made in China?
I think the infrastructure is there, and PCH has strategically put itself in that location in Shenzhen because of the suppliers are within 3 hours. Up to maybe 1,500 suppliers within 3 hours of where we are, and then we can deliver to anywhere in the world in under 72 hours. It's strategically poised in that area.
Yes, it's just there. I think it's north of Hong Kong, quite close, just across the border. But again, the growth of that place in a relatively short time is absolutely stunning.
It was a fishing village, I think, 30 years ago.
1978,
something like that. Yeah.
Well, I did a gig in Shenzhen. They have an old street, like what's supposed to be a historical street. I said, I'm older than your old street. How can you guys have an old street?
So, 60,000 people. Okay, some village 30 years ago. I mean, a village maybe the size of Limerick or Waterford.
Yeah.
But how many people there now?
About 12 million. Yeah.
That is just
nearly on a par with Hong Kong, but you never even hear
stunning.
of Shenzhen. Nobody knows where Shenzhen is. We don't even hear about Shenzhen. Very few would know. Yeah.
And you think how manageable or how well organised is all that? I mean, it sounds like a recipe for absolute chaos to grow from 60,000 to 12 million in the space of 3 decades.
I think their infrastructure is spot on. I mean, they recognise bottlenecks here and there. I mean, there's no debates where roads go in. A road will just go in, and it will go in over a weekend or things.
And
will
I
happen
suppose there are
at
human
speed.
rights questions that would arise about people being turfed out of their houses and the like.
I'd say from the point of view of when things have to happen, they just happen.
Just in case you don't want to get in trouble business-wise, I can take over from here, just in case you don't want to get anybody. No, the thing is that the government owns the land, and then they just sell leases. So if they decide that they want a road to go through, they just say, this is our land, we'll do what we want. So they're not concerned with, say, the farmers that just get pushed away, because they say, well, it's not your land, you're just tenants of ours. So they just shift them on in that way. So nobody actually has property rights. I mean, it's actually quite a public fight that you're almost allowed to make in China, which is, people that have been on the land for a period of time need rights to be able to stay there. So developers can't just pay off a government official. The government official now says, we're developing this land, and then the government and the developer make all the money based on these other people's misery. And essentially, they give them an apartment in a high-rise, and they say, well, you're going to get an apartment out of it. And it's like, well, does an apartment cover the fact that you've taken my whole way of life and, like our, the whole sort of structure of our society? So that's a real bone of contention in China, but it is extremely effective in terms of getting things done.
And I suppose, Rob, it's not just, in Shenzhen or within a few hours of it. I remember on that trip I alluded to earlier, we went to a place called Shenyang, which I described as the Kinnegad of China, population 10 million, where it was triple glazing that was needed, and there was some pretty awful hail and rain and the like. But they have an extraordinary capacity, and there was a Glendinplex factory, Martin Naughton factory, that was being opened there. But they have an extraordinary capacity to make things to order, to design, and to do it with astonishing efficiency quickly.
Yeah, the speed is incredible. We have an expression, anything is possible in China. So where you would meet some roadblocks, unfortunately, here with different things, or you mightn't have the capability in place over there, things can be done.
No board planola, or at least board planola is not about
no.
Well, if there is one, they're doing a terrible job.
Well, I suppose it depends what your definition of planola and planning is. Look, we leave it there. Thank you both very much for coming in. Des Bishop, do you want to remind us about those gigs? Or are they
I've got gigs. I got a gig this Saturday in Vicar Street, and then you go to desbishop.net. I've got different dates. You want to hear more about China and dating in China and various things, you can go see.
Yeah, a quick word about that, by the way. Dating in China. Sorry.
No problem. What's that?
You tried it?
Oh, yeah.
You've been on the old side for the dating, though.
That was in the Independent today. I mentioned that on a radio show, and suddenly it was a headline, as if I'm out in the paper saying I'm too old for dating. But no, they're very serious about dating. Here you're going to date. It's like, let's have a good time. In China, we're going to date. It's about marriage. Immediately they're figuring whether it's going to work out or not.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Des Bishop and Rob Kiely, Operations Director for PCH International. Thank you both for being with us. We're going to be talking silkworms. That's in our book club after this break.